Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, you know who it is, and it's time for another installment of our Stink Piece series, where I react to another culture writer's writing, or maybe video blog, or something like that. And today I'm going to be talking about a recently released piece of work by a writer and a commentator for the website InfoWars, Mr. Paul Joseph Watson. This guy hails from the UK, and he is no stranger to controversy, with a lot of his videos being about hot-button topics such as terrorism and immigration and Black Lives Matter and social justice. I've been watching his videos for a while. I find him pretty entertaining, even if I disagree with a great deal of what he says. He's essentially the Onision of the red pill community, and he recently dropped a video called The Truth About Popular Culture. It's not the first time he's spoken on this topic, specifically popular music, but this is definitely his longest and shittiest video on the subject.
Popular culture is more vulgar, vapid, self-absorbed, hedonistic, and dehumanizing than at any other time in living memory.
I can feel the red pills raining down on me. The red pill rain is coming. He's about to drop a truth bomb, everybody. From here in the video, Paul decries how much of a talentless shit show popular culture has become, and he has a pretty interesting theory as to why that is.
20th century onwards, post-modernist, moral relativist, critical theory espousing, cultural, Marxist, nihilists began to seize control of society.
Oh, that's why. Okay. Now, the postmodernists, are the Jews helping them do this? Or is it the lizard people working behind the scenes? Or is it more of a three-pronged approach? Are they all working together? Also, are they a part of the conspiracy to turn the frogs gay? Are they a part of that? Paul goes on to identify postmodern art as less of an art movement and more of a grand scheme to subvert Western values. Which is funny because postmodernism is born out of the West. Without the status quo, without the culture of the West surrounding it, it wouldn't have anything to react to. It wouldn't have anything to be ironic for. It wouldn't have anything to take the piss out of. And the idea of postmodernists reshaping society in their image, what image are you even talking about? One of the most prevailing critiques of postmodernism is that it's so vague and relativist that it doesn't really stand for anything. Given that, even if postmodernists wanted to do what you're saying they're doing, I don't even really think they could achieve it. Of course you can be so postmodern that you're just an idiot with his head up his ass, that you're rejecting every single thing the mainstream has to offer you. But in moderation, it can expand new avenues for expression and ideas. If it wasn't for postmodern and abstract art movements, we'd all go to art galleries and still look at a bunch of fucking still lifes and portraits, you know? Which are cool, but, you know, variety and evolution and new ideas are cool too. Plus loads of artists like Lou Reed, especially on albums like Metal Machine Music or The Beatles, Number 9, have incorporated abstract and postmodernist musical and artistic ideas into their works and enhanced them, made them more intriguing. Plus there's a plethora of postmodern minimalist composers who have made some incredible music over the years. I don't think there's an art fan, postmodern or just modern, that would argue that Philip Glass isn't an amazing, brilliant, talented artist and composer. Plus, you know, punk music and art rock share quite a bit in common philosophically with postmodernism, and we know how much you love punk, Paul. You're such a true punk.
Television. TV's endless portrayal of broken families, emasculated male figures, and aberrant, nihilistic, droog-like youths. The stars of so-called reality television are virtually always narcissistic, amoral, and borderline insane. They have no redeeming traits, indoctrinating us with the idea that this is actual reality. That this is how we should act too.
Yes, Paul, okay, there's a lot of shitty reality TV out there, we get it, but your average person just kind of uses this as something to gawk at. If what was happening on the screen was normal or normalized, as normal as you make it seem to be, there'd be no reason to stare at it. And the most hilarious thing about Paul's warning of subversion here with these television shows, including the warning that pedophilia is going to be normalized real soon, guys, is that his audience will just nod in agreement with everything he's saying, but if you show them a video of Anita Sarkeesian saying that video games will reinforce sexist attitudes, guys, they'll all go, no! When the truth is, it's all bullshit. Paul, you completely deride modern culture and modern television completely through this lens of shitty reality TV shows, despite the fact that in the modern age, especially with streaming platforms like Netflix, there's no shortage of interesting and engaging and boundary-pushing television that are spinning new narratives and bringing new perspectives. Orange is the New Black, Breaking Bad, Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, just to name a few, and also the ever poignant and always amazing and ahead of the curve fucking Black Mirror. You would love that show if you haven't seen it, Paul. It would do wonders for your conspiracy boner. You make some fair points here about narcissism and obsession with celebrity, but, this isn't so much an invisible hand forcing us to think and feel this way as much as it is our hyper-obsession with this new thing called social media, Paul. A lot of people don't use it the way that you do. They use it to engage in and create a little social bubble around the things that they love, and sometimes people make themselves obsessed with the Kardashians. I share some of your concerns here, but you don't really bring any evidence that we're spiraling downward into a hellfire of irredeemable narcissism, other than just your disgust at this part of modern culture. Now, in this video thus far, I really had my work cut out for me because Paul says so much dumb shit, but he really takes the cake when he starts talking about music.
Music is less diverse, and the lyrics are more dumbed down than ever before.
Man, rap today fucking sucks bad. They're not even saying words anymore. They just got a hard-ass fucking beat to trick dumbasses like you to make you think you like the shit.
Okay, no, that was not an edit. That was not me editing this to make Paul look stupid. He literally used one of the cringiest fucking rappers walking the planet as evidence of his shitty point here. Later in the video, Paul even asserts that Hopsin never quite made it to the mainstream because he's just way too truthful. He'd be dropping these truth bombs on everybody. He'd be red pilling everyone. Which couldn't be further from the truth, not only because Hopsin has the mental capacity of a 14-year-old atheist, but also because Hopsin is not really doing too well. His career is on the skids because of his failing relationship with his independent label, which he has rapped about on numerous occasions because his business partner was doing shady things with the money. Okay, here's a bold point.
We've hit a brick wall. There hasn't been a single authentic movement in popular music for the last quarter of a century.
The last quarter of a century, Paul? You realize that would include Oasis and Nirvana and a lot of the other artists that you cite in this video as being good examples of modern popular culture, right? Like, you know that, right? Is it that you can't count backwards from 25, or are you just that fucking wishy-washy on the history of modern music? Are you completely writing off the 2000s here, Paul? Like Radiohead, Tool, the rise of indie music, not only artists who hit the mainstream like Modest Mouse and Arcade Fire, but acts that remained a little more underground but are still beloved and are still seen as fantastic, amazing creators, people like Animal Collective or Joanna Newsom. Also, there's been the recent growth in popularity of conscious hip-hop and jazz rap through artists like J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar. Wild and crazy and out there and experimental acts like Danny Brown, for example. A lot of these artists talk about social issues. A lot of these artists make rebellious music. A lot of these artists talk politics, and you'd be a cultural layman to completely ignore them. Also, many of them are way more relevant and interesting than fucking Hopsin. Also, this idea that there are no alternatives and there are fewer alternatives is completely bunk. Sure, maybe alternatives seem like they're harder to find because the internet has kind of blurred the lines between the underground and the mainstream, creating this two-way street of popularity and influence, creating the meteoric rise and fame of artists like Tyler, the Creator, and Frank Ocean, people who are certainly unique. You may not like them, but they certainly have their own sound, their own style, and would not have made it as big as they are now had it been like 15 years ago. And while a lot of cultural trash has been created in the internet age, one of the great things about the internet age is that you don't need to rely on one certain media outlet or a handful of certain media outlets to get your music, get your news, get your anything. You can turn off these pieces of cultural trash if you so choose. You're about my age, so you should remember a time when it was almost fucking inescapable. Things like boy bands and fucking hair metal and bad Europop. These days, you don't hear One Direction unless you're fucking looking for some One Direction. And I don't know, if someone wants to hear that, I wouldn't begrudge them some One Direction.
Whether it be fashion, art, music, literature, comedy, culture has been completely sanitized. There is no counterculture.
Paul, that's because the internet has given alternative expressions and points of view a seat at the table. You are here on your YouTube channel giving silly, uninformed opinions about art, and you couldn't do this 15 years ago, Paul. There's no reason to bitterly rattle your sabers at the castle walls of the mainstream anymore because the walls have been torn down and we're all just kind of free-flowingly commiserating and consuming the art and the media that we want to, at the pace that we want to, when we want to, where we want to. However, the trade-off there, though, is less tangible counterculture because we're no longer as organized. You know, it's not the insiders versus the outsiders. It's kind of this weird grayscale now. Everybody's kind of amorphously appealing to their own little niches. You should know this better than anyone. And yet you're being really intellectually dishonest here, Paul, actually throughout the entire video. Also, how are you going to shit on Miley Cyrus for her raunchy stage show, but then put Marilyn Manson on this pedestal like, oh, he was counterculture, he was goth? I watched that man in high school on stage at Ozfest sodomize himself with a water bottle. Manson was doing edgy, nasty, disgusting things on stage too. The only difference between then and now is that back then it was a little more taboo. What Miley is doing is just what her predecessors did. She's pushing boundaries, she's poking at taboos. Maybe she's doing it less with her music and more with her stage show, but she's kind of doing it all the same. And Marilyn Manson, I love the guy, but he's not a musical genius either. The sound and the writing behind a lot of his albums depended on the musicians that he surrounded himself with. Many of his contributions to modern music added up to some edgy lyrics and a kind of cultural boogeyman who poked at the sacred cows of conservative culture. And we know how you love conservative culture, Paul.
Have you ever visited Tate Modern in London? It's a giant building full of scrap metal, concrete blocks, urinals.
Stop. Paul, stop. Do you even know the history behind this piece? Do you know the history behind this piece, Paul? If you knew the history behind this piece, Paul, I don't think you'd be calling it just a urinal. Just a fucking urinal. Of course, that's technically what it is, but originally this piece, which there are many copies of it now, was submitted to a 1917 art exhibition where it was claimed that if you are an independent artist and you paid the fee, no matter what, your piece would be shown. And the submitter of this piece was testing that rule. The submitter and the artist knew full well how people would react to this. They knew what they were doing. They knew how this piece would be viewed in the grander scheme of the modern art world. It wasn't just some turn-of-the-century hipster saying that, oh, this urinal that I flipped over is totally art. You just don't get it, man. It's essentially shit posting before shit posting even existed. And that's a beautiful thing. And you're a fucking moron for not realizing it or researching it. Have postmodern artists kind of belabored this point with the submission of cinder blocks and turds? Sure. But like with any revolutionary idea in the art world, it's going to get repeated again and again and again until something more cutting edge comes along. You should be able to appreciate that considering your endorsement of an Eminem ripoff earlier in your video. And to your issue with this Turner Prize nod to this giant sculpture of an ass, are you such a humorless dimwit that you don't see how amazing this is?
Popular culture as it exists today actually represents a direct threat to Western civilization, since it provides our enemies with a justifiable reason to destroy us.
Paul, I'm glad you saved this statement for last in your video, because not only is it the dumbest thing that you've said in this entire video, but it's the dumbest fucking thing you've ever said, you fucking idiot. Really? Because there's art and music out there that's raunchy and maybe you don't like it because it's really shallow, that's justifiable means for religious extremists to attack people in the West? Are you serious? So if ISIS orchestrates an attack because of Miley Cyrus, you're just like, meh. If hypersexualized music videos are reasons for ISIS to attack us, why not other things that they don't like? What if a gay person wants to write a song about being gay? Or what if a woman wants to write a television show about going to the grocery store by herself? Paul, if you really think what you just said here, you're just as stupid and as extreme as the terrorist boogeyman that you dangle in front of your audience every other video. Okay, to finish off this video, let's recap. You don't know what postmodern art is. You don't know what punk is. You don't know what happened 25 years ago. You don't understand how the internet has fractured popular culture. You don't understand hip-hop because you completely wrote off gangster rap despite the fact that artists within that genre like NWA spoke truth to power. And then the rapper that you do endorse is cringier than the SJWs that you whinge about in almost every video you drop. And whinging about SJWs, Paul, it's shooting fish in a barrel. It doesn't make you smart to point out that safe spaces are dumb and that Antifa sucks. It doesn't make you some kind of brilliant cultural authority. Don't let it trick you into thinking that you know anything about music or popular culture. So, shitty video. Let's see that it doesn't happen again. Transition. And God, I'm done with this video, but I still feel like there's so much more I could have said about it. Paul's defense of Kanye, despite the fact that Kanye embodies almost everything about pop culture that Paul hates so much. The fact that Paul constantly conflates art that has no meaning and is nihilistic in nature and intentionally has no meaning with art that is shallow. Doesn't necessarily mean it has no meaning or that it's meaningless, but it's just a very shallow meaning. And there's been shallow popular art for decades now, but I digress. The video's over. Maybe if Paul says some more dumb stuff in some future videos, I'll respond to that. We'll see. From what I understand, he has a video coming out about how conservative is the new punk. That should be a gold mine. Other links, videos next to my head. Subscribe to the channel. Official website too. You guys are the best. Forever.